Welcome to Twisted Truths, where betrayal meets brutal payback, and where the most unexpected twists expose what people are really capable of. This story isn't just shocking, it's personal. My name is Casey Miller. I'm 33 years old, and I used to believe loyalty was everything. I live alone now, in a dim one-room apartment above a dying strip mall in Milltown, New Jersey. You can hear the trains at night. The air smells like oil and regret. I've got a fold-out cot, a dusty mini fridge, and a pile of medical bills that could crush a person flat. But that's not the worst part. The worst part is the silence. Not long ago, my phone would light up all day, texts from my mom, calls from my little sister Lindsay asking for money for school stuff, my brother Ben needing me to fix his car, again. It was like being the support beam in a house where everyone else got to decorate the walls. No one ever asked how I was doing. I never complained. I thought that's what love looked like. You give. You show up. You break your back for your family and trust that one day, they'll show up for you, too. Spoiler alert, they didn't. I was working 2 jobs. Mechanic during the day, gas station night clerk after hours. My hands were always bleeding or numb. My back felt like it was lined with broken glass. But I kept going. Kept fixing Ben's car. Kept sending Lindsay money for her art projects and sketchbooks. Paid half my parents' mortgage when Dad's disability check didn't cover the bills. They called me dependable, but it started to sound like an insult. Then I started getting sick. Quiet at first, just headaches, dizzy spells. I brushed it off. Had no time to be sick. But things got worse fast. I collapsed at the gas station one night, cracked my chin on the counter, and woke up in the ER hooked to machines I couldn't afford. Diagnosis: acute kidney failure. One more missed shift and I'd be fired. One more unpaid bill and I'd lose the apartment. I called my mom, shaking, scared out of my mind. She didn't answer. I texted Ben and Lindsay. Lindsay left me on read. Ben replied 3 days later with, "Damn bro, hope you're okay. I'm in Florida for a networking retreat." A networking retreat. I was lying in a hospital bed with tubes in my arms, barely breathing, and my family was too busy to care. When I finally got a hold of Mom, she sounded annoyed. Said she was too old to be dealing with all this stress. Said I needed to be strong, that Lindsay was preparing for her big gallery showing and Ben was making real money now, and they couldn't drop everything. I'd never felt so alone. So disposable. Like I was a broken part in the machine that wasn't worth fixing. Then the bills came. Insurance wouldn't cover the dialysis. I needed a kidney transplant, soon, or I'd die. The doctors asked about family. They're usually the best match, they said. I laughed. It sounded like a threat. I begged them anyway. I asked my mother. Pleaded with Ben. Even offered to cover the travel costs for tests. They all said no. Mom said, "You've always been the strong one, Casey." Ben said, "Man, I'm not trying to mess up my body. I've got clients, dude." Lindsay. She didn't even reply. I spent weeks hooked up to machines, my body failing inch by inch, watching the people I loved post photos of cocktails and career wins on social media. And then one day, they stopped answering altogether. I wasn't their brother anymore. I was a burden. An expense. A ghost. That was the day something inside me snapped. Not with anger, at first. With clarity. I had given everything. Time. Money. Blood. And now I was dying alone. But not quietly. Because this wasn't where my story ended. This was where it began. The hospital room had 4 walls, but it felt like a coffin. Cold fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, the kind that hum like an unanswered question. I stared at the pale ceiling tiles, each one a cracked square of silence. My body felt like lead, limbs heavy, skin too tight, breath shallow. But it wasn't the pain from dialysis or the nausea that broke me. It was the fact that nobody came. Nobody. Not my mom, who once rocked me through fevers. Not Ben, who I once carried home half-drunk in the rain. Not Lindsay, whose tuition I paid for with a busted back and double shifts. They weren't there when I needed them most. Not even a call. I stared at the phone for hours. I kept it plugged in, brightness turned up, volume on high. I told myself they'd come. They had to. But nothing. Just texts about bills, about problems I could no longer solve. My family didn't need me anymore. And apparently, they never loved me, just the way I held things together. A week into the hospital stay, I got the transplant waitlist news, 4 to 6 years. I didn't have 4 years. Hell, I didn't even have 4 months without money. Dr. Garza, my nephrologist, had kind eyes but tired ones. Casey, she said gently, if we don't find a living donor, and soon. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. I didn't cry that night. I didn't scream. I just stopped. Stopped calling them. Stopped hoping. Stopped trying to be anyone's lifeline. There were days where I stared out the window of the hospital room, watching the wind batter dying trees outside. Autumn in Milltown always came like that, fast, sharp, and cruel. I thought about ending things. Not with pills or anything dramatic. Just not showing up to dialysis. Letting it happen. Letting myself go. Because what was I fighting for? Not for them. And then, on a Wednesday I'll never forget, someone walked in who I never expected to see again. I'd just finished another brutal 4-hour dialysis session. I was weak, pale, and still wearing the same cracked hoodie I'd owned since college. I was curled up on the stiff bed, scrolling blankly through old photos, ones where my family smiled with me in them like I mattered. There was a knock on the door. I didn't look up right away. I assumed it was a nurse or maybe a billing rep with another stack of unpaid invoices. Casey. My eyes snapped to the door. It took me a second. He looked different. Taller, sharper, dressed in a tailored charcoal suit. But I knew that voice. Derek? I whispered. He smiled, and just like that, 8 years melted away. Derek Vallon. My best friend in high school. My ride or die. My brother in everything but blood. Until he left. He moved to California after college with a business dream and barely looked back. We lost touch when he stopped calling. And now, here he was. What are you doing here? My voice cracked. How did you even know I was? Hank, he said quickly. Your boss at the shop. I tracked him down. I've been trying to find you for months. I blinked. Why? He stepped closer, pulling up the chair beside the bed. Because I owe you everything, he said. And then he told me something that would change everything. Derek sat in that hospital chair like it was a confession booth. Like he'd come to unload something he'd been carrying for years. I couldn't even sit up straight, my body was too weak, but my mind was firing on all cylinders. You said you've been looking for me, I whispered. Why? He looked down for a moment, as if gathering himself, then met my eyes. Because I didn't forget what you did for me, Casey. Back in college. You gave me your rent money so I could buy my first laptop. Remember that? I blinked. Barely. Well, I do. You said, don't worry, I'll make it back with overtime. You worked 2 jobs so I could have a shot. And you told me, don't pay me back, just pay it forward. His voice cracked. I did, Casey. I built my company. I started from nothing. I worked hard, yeah, but your money gave me the start. You gave me the foundation. I told myself every year, one day, I'll find him and say thank you the right way. I didn't know what to say. My throat was tight, my chest heavier than ever. That was so long ago. I'd forgotten the gesture. I had made sacrifices like that 1,000 times, for friends, for family, for strangers. And most of the time, they just faded away. But Derek hadn't forgotten. And then, came the part one wasn't prepared for. I came to Milltown 3 weeks ago, he said. Before I found Hank, I stopped by your parents' house. That made my stomach twist. I asked them where you were. I told them I was trying to reach you. Your mom just stared at me. She said you were going through some things, but she didn't think you'd want to talk. That you were private about your health. I swallowed hard. She never mentioned you were dying. Never said anything about kidney failure. Then your brother came out, Ben, right? I nodded slowly. He pulled me aside, Derek continued, his eyes darkening. He said he'd heard I was successful now. He smiled, leaned in, and said, if you want to help Casey, it's going to cost you. What? He asked for money, Derek said, disgust dripping from his voice. Said he was your power of attorney. Said the hospital bills were stacking up. I asked for paperwork. Proof. Anything. He got angry. Said if I really cared, I'd just wire the money. My mouth dropped open. I didn't give him a dime, Derek said. But that's when I knew something was wrong. Really wrong. And I found Hank a few days later. He told me where you were. I couldn't speak. I felt like I was falling. Like the weight I was already carrying had tripled. My family didn't just abandon me, they tried to profit off my suffering. Ben had stood there, looking another man in the eye, and tried to turn my pain into a paycheck. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I'm so sorry, Casey, Derek said, gripping my hand. I didn't know what was happening to you. But I do now. And I'm going to help. I finally found my voice, shaky as it was. Why? I asked. After all this time. Why now? He smiled faintly. Because you gave me everything when you had nothing. And because I was never going to forget you. We sat in silence for a moment. Then he said, let's get you out of this hole. And let's do it smart. That's when something inside me changed. Not the despair. That was still there, buried deep. But now it was stitched together with something new, something hot, sharp, and cold all at once. Resolve. They left me to die. They used me. And now they were lying to people, about me, to get paid. I wasn't going to let that stand. Not anymore. Something snapped inside me after Derek told me what Ben did. I'd spent my whole life trying to prove I was worth loving. Quietly holding everyone else's burdens, fixing problems before they even noticed them, thinking, hoping, that one day they'd look at me and say, thank you. We see you. But they didn't see me. They saw a tool. A safety net. A free ride. And when I broke, when my body physically collapsed, they threw me out like a spare part. But Derek? He didn't just remember me. He came back. And now I had something I hadn't had in a long time, a partner. And a reason to fight. I want to make them feel what they did to me, I told Derek one night. I was back in my tiny apartment, recovering between dialysis sessions, and he was sitting on the floor beside my cot with his laptop. Not with fists. Not with yelling. I want them to understand what it's like to be invisible. To be used. Derek looked at me, his jaw tightening. Then we'll hit them where it hurts most. Ben was flashy. Always had been. Obsessed with appearances, his car, his Instagram, his clothes. I remembered fixing the brakes on his SUV last summer while he bragged about a fake, crypto venture, to our uncle. He didn't have real success, just smoke and mirrors. So we started with Ben. Derek had resources now. Private investigators. Financial analysts. Legal experts. Within a week, we had a full picture of Ben's situation. It wasn't pretty. His business wasn't legitimate. He was juggling multiple maxed-out credit cards, renting everything he posted online, car, apartment, even his watch. He'd borrowed thousands from shady lenders. And worst of all, he'd made a deal behind my back. Derek confirmed it through a quiet contact at the hospital. Ben had sold a kidney, my kidney, to an anonymous donor program in exchange for a finder's fee. Except the recipient was me. He'd arranged the donation, for $200,000. Derek had tried everything to find a compatible donor. But my own brother stepped forward, on one condition. Cash. The deal was arranged quickly and quietly. A lawyer managed the paperwork under a fake name. Derek had suspected something shady, but time was running out, so he agreed. He said he was doing it out of love, Derek told me, shaking his head. I paid because I wanted you to live, not because I believed him. I just didn't want to tell you. I sat in silence, my fingers curling into the blanket on my lap. My brother saved my life, for a price. That wasn't love. That was business. I should have felt grateful. Instead, I felt sick. Let's expose it, I whispered. All of it. Derek nodded. We will. But not yet. Not until we've built everything. So we got to work. He helped me build a small nonprofit. On paper, it was for kidney failure support and advocacy. In reality, it was bait. We made it known, through carefully planted social media posts and whispers in the Milltown community, that I was working with major donors and big-time partners, including Derek's company. I made vague mentions of legal settlements, insurance claims, even potential TV interviews. And sure enough, the sharks came sniffing. Mom called me first. Casey, sweetheart. I heard you're doing better. Your sister showed me your Instagram. What's all this about funding and documentaries? I said nothing at first. Let the silence hang. Then I said, calmly, I'm just trying to tell my story, Mom. She paused. We want to support you. Maybe we could, come visit. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Sure. Come visit. Let's talk face to face. I didn't tell her Derek would be recording the whole thing. Because this wasn't just a comeback. This was war. And I was going to win. They walked into the room like nothing had happened. Like I hadn't nearly died. Like they hadn't abandoned me when I needed them most. Mom wore her worried face, that practiced soft smile she always used at church functions. My dad trailed behind her, silent as usual, eyes darting around my apartment like he couldn't believe I was living here. Lindsay wore designer sunglasses indoors and barely looked up from her phone. And Ben? Ben wore a smug grin, like he was already counting something in his head. Probably my money. Casey, Mom breathed, as if the name alone carried more emotion than any apology. You've lost weight. I nodded slowly. Dialysis'll do that to you. Ben stepped forward, arms outstretched like we were long-lost brothers. Hey, man, you're looking better. You know, we were really worried. No you weren't, I said. He froze, arms still halfway open. My voice hadn't risen. It didn't need to. You were worried enough to sell your kidney. For $200,000. Silence hit the room like a dropped cinder block. My mom blinked. Casey, what are you talking about? I'm talking about the fact that my transplant wasn't an act of love. It was a sale. And I know everything. I watched their faces, Mom's fear, Ben's sudden defensiveness, Lindsay's annoyed eye roll like this was just some inconvenient drama. Derek paid you, Ben, I said. And you lied. You told people you saved my life. What you really did was name your price and walk away. Ben's face turned red. That's not fair. You were dying. I helped. You got paid, I snapped. Like a dealer unloading a part. Casey, please, my mother said, stepping forward. We made mistakes, but we're still your family. No, I said, sharper now. You made choices. And now you're here because you think I've got something. A settlement. A business. Maybe TV deals. Am I wrong? They said nothing. I turned and gestured toward Derek, who stepped out of the kitchen with his phone in hand, camera still rolling. He gave me a small nod. I wanted this on record, I said. Because I want the world to know what it looks like when a man gives everything to his family, and gets thrown away like garbage. Mom's lips trembled. Casey, this isn't who you are. You're right, I said. I'm not the man you used to know. That man would have forgiven you. Ben stepped forward. What do you want, huh? Revenge? You want to ruin our lives because we didn't grovel soon enough? I leaned forward, looking him dead in the eyes. I don't want to ruin your life, Ben. I want you to watch as I rebuild mine, without you. Then I dropped the first bomb. Oh, and by the way, I contacted the hospital ethics board. Turns out, what you did technically violates organ donation law if compensation was exchanged under false pretenses. Ben paled. And Derek's lawyers? Already prepared to file fraud charges if you try to make another move. My mother gasped. Lindsay dropped her phone. Derek stepped in. I'd recommend you leave now. The footage we got today. We'll only use it if necessary. They left. Quickly. No one looked back. And when the door shut, I exhaled. I'd never felt that kind of power before. It wasn't about revenge, it was about taking back control. It was about finally being seen. 2 weeks passed. The air in my apartment felt lighter. Cleaner. Like the poison had finally left. My health was still fragile. Dialysis still drained me. But I was stronger than I'd been in months, physically, emotionally, mentally. Derek and I met regularly to build out the nonprofit. My story was gaining attention. A podcast invited me to speak. A support group for transplant survivors asked me to co-host a webinar. I was becoming more than what happened to me. And then, just as things were settling, a letter arrived. No return address. I almost didn't open it. But something about the handwriting stopped me. It was my father's. Inside was a single page. Neat. No emotion. Just, information. Casey. I don't expect forgiveness. I know we failed you. But there's something you need to know. The day Derek came to the house, your mother and I didn't tell you the whole truth. Ben didn't just sell his kidney. He used your medical crisis to blackmail Derek. He threatened to go public and accuse Derek of organ trafficking if he didn't pay him more. Derek paid. Not once. Twice. $200,000 for the kidney. Then another $150,000 to keep Ben silent. I'm telling you this now because I've seen what that did to Derek. He didn't want to tell you. But you should know what your brother really is. I dropped the letter. My hands were shaking. Derek had protected me from this. Paid not only for my kidney, but for my peace of mind. And Ben? Ben had gone even further than I'd imagined. He'd weaponized my survival. Turned it into a cash grab. Held my friend hostage through my own life. My mind reeled. Was this my blood? No. It wasn't. Blood didn't define family. Loyalty did. And suddenly, my entire mission shifted. This wasn't just about cutting them off anymore. This was about making sure they never did this to anyone again. Derek came over that night. I confronted him with the letter. He didn't deny it. I didn't want you to know, he said, rubbing the back of his neck. I didn't want that poison to touch you any more than it already had. You should have told me, I whispered. He nodded. I know. I looked at him, and I realized something. He wasn't just the man who helped me recover. He was the man who saved my soul. Because while my blood family sold parts of me, he gave without expecting anything. I'm going to do it, I told him. Do what? Expose Ben. Fully. Publicly. With everything. He hesitated. Are you sure? That's a war. I smiled. Calm. Cold. I've been in a war my whole life. This time, I get to win. I never thought I'd speak in front of a crowd again. Not after the hospital stays. The pity stares. The weakness. But there I was, on stage at the Milltown Community Health Conference, a microphone in one hand, my story in the other. The room was packed. Local news had picked up on my nonprofit. They'd heard about the app Derek helped me launch for transplant patients. They wanted a face behind the mission. I gave them one. But this time, I didn't just tell a survivor's story. I told the truth. Hi, I'm Casey, I began. I'm a mechanic. A former gas station clerk. A dialysis patient. And I'm alive today, because of a kidney transplant. Applause. Polite. Respectful. Then I continued. But what most people don't know, is that my transplant wasn't a miracle. It was a transaction. Gasps. I took a breath, then laid it out. Not names. Not legal accusations. But the full, raw truth. My own brother sold me his kidney for $200,000. And then blackmailed the man who paid to save my life. All while my family ignored my calls, my pain, and my reality. The room fell dead silent. I'm not telling you this for pity, I said. I'm telling you because we need to redefine what family means. Family isn't blood. Family is who shows up when everyone else disappears. That last line hit. When I walked off stage, people stood. Clapped. Cheered. Cried. Later that night, I published the full story online, with documentation. The anonymous donor, the payments, the silence. The blog went viral. Derek's team ensured every legal base was covered. Ben tried to deny it. Then he tried to spin it. Didn't matter. The backlash was swift. His clients dropped him. His face showed up in exposés about unethical medical arrangements. He lost the new condo. The fancy car. Last I heard, he moved out of state. Alone. My mother called once more. Left a voicemail. We're sorry, Casey. We didn't know how bad things were. We thought you'd always bounce back. I never called back. Because I wasn't bouncing back. I was rising. Rebuilding. Becoming. The nonprofit grew. Derek and I expanded the app to include live counselor support. I started mentoring young transplant patients. We hosted annual events. Scholarships. Outreach programs. And every time I looked out into a crowd of survivors, caregivers, strangers who cared more than my own family had, I knew something with certainty. I hadn't lost my family. I'd finally found it. In the end, truth has a way of surfacing, even if it comes twisted through pain and betrayal. As one wise voice once said, sometimes your greatest enemy was once your closest ally. If this story struck a chord with you, let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, share, and spread the word, because justice deserves to be heard.